Syrd Moshin Abbas is a journalist and political commentator joining us from London. Mohammed Ali Araki is also a journalist and political analyst, also joining us from London. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Syrd Moshin Abbas, I'll first start with you. I think it's noteworthy to put into, an approach to this question as to the fact that Iran's leader says the enemy put everything they had in terms of any avenue that they felt that should be channeled in order to go for their ultimate goal, which I'm guessing would be obviously for a change in the Islamic Republic system. But they failed. Isn't that one way of looking first at what Iran's leader has said?
I think it's fairly evident they failed. Of course, there was a huge occasion, and what they used their cyber warfare techniques. They used every terrorism technique with all their proxy terrorists surrounding Iran, and both internally within Iran as well. They've obviously upped the ante in terms of the economic maximum pressure scenario, which has been going on for, decades now. But of course, all of this has failed. The efforts this time, though, were particularly focused, I think, on also using some of what I call the cultural psychological operations. I think they rather hope that the Iranian youth, the Iranian public, will rebel against the establishment because they prefer what we could only describe as Westoxified morality, Westoxified social and cultural agendas. And I think it's quite clear that that seems to have been rejected by the majority of the Islamic Republic of Iran. People are not that naive. They understand that what's going on in terms of the cultural, economic, political, and military, psychological operations, black ops, are all part of a hugely well-resourced agenda that is coming out from America. Now, the problem for America is, quite frankly, that everything they do in that Middle East region essentially goes against any interests for the American people. The fact that they want to isolate Iran and cause all this if you like persecution or economic terrorism, etc., actually equals as much of a problem for America as a whole, because they don't gain anything financially or economically from doing this. They do it for the Israelis. They do it for the Zionist movement. They're doing it because the money mafia elitists want this policy. They gain nothing from Israel other than a hegemony and a sort of a military hegemony in the recent past that we've seen for years before as well. But it's Iran's capability and its progress with technology, with science, and in other fields as well, that Israeli hegemony in the region has become hugely challenged. And it's for this reason that America is being manipulated by the Zionists and by the money mafia Israeli forces to turn more and more of the pressure on Iran. This is what's happening. And actually, the American people are being exploited. Their taxes are being exploited in order to cause this problem. And the net result is America is losing its grip on the region and still not acquiescing to logic, which is to say they should reach out to the Islamic Republic of Iran and settle their issues in the region with the Republic.
Taking a look at some of the channels that were used, Mohammed Ali Araki, do you believe that the way that this was devised was not to use just one, but to use all different avenues, as I mentioned in my first question, which would include the media, which would include the youth, the cultural aspect, throw in the espionage services of different countries, have an international campaign to vilify Iran, which overall is under the Iranophobia umbrella, all at once, with the hopes that this would obviously go for the aim of toppling perhaps the government. Which one of these do you think was either ranking high, and overall, why did it fail?
I believe that generally they planned it differently this time. So they had the economical side, the cultural side, and they also had the youth in, and they wanted to get the youth out against especially the religious scholars. This was something that went on in Iran for a period of time during the Mahsa Amini events that were occurring in Iran. The reason to that was that they wanted to try and overthrow the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is a government that is based on Islam. America and their friends did not want that. So I believe the most important aspect of it was the intelligence support, the money that was invested in it. The United States of America and their allies, they have their own people in their countries, with the country being stormed and with storms and different issues, and they're investing this instead of investing on their own people, they are investing it in another country with the hope of getting a target. And one of the most important aspects that it's important that I mention is that not only Iran, but on a international scale, I was following the Mahsa Amini events from the beginning internationally. They gave a big pass to their people. One of the examples is the UK. We had like 5 police injured by those protesters. So you see the way that they gave them the access and the cooperation that existed is something that was absolutely different to before. There is a law in the United Kingdom, and I'm sure in America and other countries, that it bans the glorification of violence, but the West and their allies, all the Western allies that are against the Islamic Republic of Iran, this time what they did was they legitimized it in the frameworks of getting their own targets forward. We just today I was reading the news about Ali Reza Akbari, who was a spy. He was a very high-ranked Iranian official, but he was later caught to be a spy, and he was sentenced. So this is the type of work that the West are looking for, and this is what they try to do. But as always, they have always failed, and they will fail in the coming days. But I do agree with the fact that the Mahsa Amini events that occurred, it was something completely different. But as usual, they failed, and I expect the same to happen. If they attempt to do anything in the future, they will fail again.
Well, that's the whole thing. The idea of how to move forward on the Syrd Moshin Abbas is, of course, we can't continue this conversation without at least being mentioned how vigilant the security forces and besieged paramilitary forces have actually gone out and put their lives on the line to make sure that law and order is maintained, even though many of them have been killed. I believe there's over 80 at this point, or 82, I'm not sure about the exact amount, but kudos to them, and really hats off to them for putting their lives on the line. But at the same time, do you think that this pressure tactic that the West in general has gone after is going to continue, and what kind of role would Israel play in this whole thing, because we know what they are after?
I think it is all about Israel. And the bottom line is that the Zionist lobby in Congress, the Zionist lobby, which has a hold on the Anglo-Zionist Imperial Alliance as a whole, dictates the terms and conditions of all the foreign policy, whether it's for Britain, America, or most of the EU now. So I'm afraid Iran has to stay braced for an ongoing, if you like, attack on their sovereignty. They have to stay embraced for the fact that the imperialism and the hegemony agenda, which the Americans have enjoyed across the Middle East, will continue. They have to also embrace the fact that their neighbors, who are puppets, the leaders at least, of their neighboring nations, like Saudi Arabia and others, Jordan, Egypt, all of those players in the West Asia arena who are essentially puppets of America and Israel, they will continue to also play a part, because it's from their territories, the territories even in northern Iraq, where the Kurds are again proxies and puppets of Israeli Americans, as well as the Azerbaijanis, as well as Afghanistan. All of these regions have, they have terrorist organizations or operatives which are ready to try to infiltrate Iran. And I'm afraid that is going to continue. The foreseeable future looks at a complete collapse in any of those negotiations regarding the JCPOA and the efforts by the Americans and the Israelis to basically stop Iran from having any access to nuclear development and progress in that region. It will also jeopardize of course, Iran's economics. And Iran has, of course, the more it's been put under pressure, the more Iran has learned to create what I describe as a resistance economy. So the ability to create its own manufacturing industries, the ability to reach out to the East and the Eurasian axis, to the ability to be able to become part of the Shanghai Corporation or the BRICS alliance, the ability to also reject the dollar and to dump the SWIFT mechanism of engaging in finance around the world. All these things are now inevitable. They're happening, and more of these things will obviously emerge. And the result will be that America's hold in that region will increasingly decrease. And unless they're willing to recognize the Islamic Republic of Iran as the major player within West Asia, because traditionally, historically, Iran has been the one that has dominated these regions. And unless America is willing to accept that, the reality is the antagonism will control, the more desperation will set in with American policy, and the more they will fail. The real hub of this is the Iranian people themselves. If the Iranians remember and recognize that their sovereignty, while it will make them suffer economically to some extent, in the long run, in the short run, they may suffer. But in the long run, to maintain independence, sovereignty, and an affluent Iran, they need to stick out the policies that Ayatollah Khamenei has laid out, that the Islamic Republic has laid out, and that is really about becoming self-sufficient, being resistant to all of the Zio Western imperialism.
Thank you. We're going to unfortunately have to end it there. Syrd Moshin Abbas. Many thanks, journalist and political commentator. Mohammed Ali Araki, journalist and political analyst, both from London. Thank you to you both. And with that, we come to an end for this edition of the News Review. Thanks for tuning in.